Hey everyone, this is Brian, and I thought I'd kind of talk about a character that a lot of people, a lot of fans, Sonic fans that is, have no love for. And I can understand why you have no love for this character. And that character is none other than Chris Thorndyke from Sonic X. Now, I know a lot of you, like I said, out there don't really have any love for this kid, and I can understand that. I mean, I'm not much of a fan of his either, but a lot of you feel as though him being in the series was not necessary, and the way he was portrayed in the first and second seasons was more was as of a very obsessive, very selfish kind of kid, especially towards the end of both seasons. I mean, you take a look at the end of the first season, when it looks like Sonic and his friends are going to go back to the home world, but instead part of that world ends up in our world. Well, you get the idea. Anyway, you might all remember that Chris was very reluctant to let Sonic go. As a matter of fact, he didn't want Sonic to go. In fact, if you look at the final episode of season 1, as he manages to free himself from Robotnik and not Robotnik, but from Eggman, he grabs all 7 Chaos Emeralds. And as he grabs them and he holds on to them, you hear him say the lines that you hear him say this, and I think this is one of the reasons a lot of fans don't like this kid. Because you hear him say as he's clutching onto those Chaos Emeralds that the mine. I'm not gonna take you. I'm not gonna let you take them away from me. The mine. The mine. Basically, to a lot of fans, and I'll even admit, even admit that even myself kind of looked at it this way. But I'm pretty sure a lot of fans out there as well saw this. That by holding on to those Chaos Emeralds and saying that they're his, they're mine, and he's not gonna let them go, he's basically referring to Sonic and his friends. So in other words, that's why to me a lot of fans don't like this kid because he was basically saying uh in that one spot in that episode, in that one scene I should say, that Sonic and his friends belong to him. They're his property and he's not going to let anybody take them away. Now fortunately, Chris gets his wish. Sonic and company don't return to the world because, like I said, part of their world arrives in ours in season just in time for season 2. However, at the end of season 2, towards the end, in the final, I think 3 episodes, the final 3 episodes, I believe that's what it is. Final 4, 3, yeah, it's about final 3 episodes, 4 to 3, I should say, but I think it's 3. But anyway, what happens is that Chris walks in on a conversation that his parents and his grandfather are having with the president's secretary and a fellow and another scientist that she's brought along, explaining the origin of how Sonic's world came to be and how their world came to be, and that the fact that both worlds used to be one, and that hearing and that upon hearing this, he also hears the fact that the only way both worlds can be saved from standing still in time, in other words, from never aging and never getting older or wiser or anything like that, that Sonic and his friend, that the only way that could be prevented is for Sonic and company to return to their world. Now, as I said, Ed, upon hearing this, Chris, Chris, you know, and because his parents and his grandfather and the secretary and the other lady there, they don't know he's standing in the room. They don't know he's hearing this until until a flower pot, I think it's a flower pot, crashes to the floor and breaks, and you see Chris there almost in a hypnotic state, almost like a possessive kind of possessed state, if you will, which also has made a lot of fans hate him because as he comes into the room after hearing this, he says, "You're not going to send them back. You're not sending them back, and if you do, you'll be." And then he just gets angry and says, "If you do, you'll be sorry." So in other words, instead of accepting the fact of what he's heard is true, he tries to convince himself there's got to be other ways. There's got to be other meanings for this. So he goes and So basically, he goes straight to Eggman to see if he's behind the whole situation of Sonic having to leave. Finds out that's not true, and finds out what he heard is true. Now, I don't know if I just rambled there, but for any of you that's seen the series and those episodes, you understand what I'm saying. So anyway, Chris reluctantly kind of builds up the courage for a little bit. So that's to build up the courage, if you will, to finally and reluctantly, agree that maybe it is best for both worlds to let Sonic and company go back. However, after the teleporting machine that his grandfather Chuck and Tails built, after that sends Tails and Amy and Cream and Vanilla and Eggman and Knuckles and the Chaotix and all that back to their world. Well, just as Sonic is about to enter as well to go back, Chris turns off the machine, which also has basically infuriated a lot of fans to hate this kid because he still won't let him go. But what happens in the end is Sonic tells him, hey, if you want me to stay, I'll stay. It's up to you. Basically, what Sonic is trying to tell Chris is, hey, you want me to stay and keep if I mean that much to you and you want me to stay, in other words, just prevent and just keep the world from moving forward and just have it stand still, I'll do it. But basically, he's just telling Chris he's hoping he'll make the right decision, and Chris does make the right decision finally in letting Sonic go back to his world. Now, his world, by using the 7 Chaos Emeralds that he has. Or he found. He had the 7 well, you get the idea. You get the idea. I'm not going to go into explanation for anybody who's already seen the episode. Now, we go into Season 3. And you think to yourself, okay, it's going to be a season finally with just going to be Sonic and company, right? Wrong. Because just like the previous 2 seasons before, Chris arrives on Sonic's world. Well, he doesn't arrive. He didn't arrive on Sonic's world in the previous 2 seasons because they were on his world. But what happens is Chris arrives on the scene as the way he was when we last saw him as a kid. However, the difference is mentally he's 18 years old. But because only 6 months have passed on Sonic's world, while 6 years passed on his, he's reduced back to the body of a 12-year-old. Now, though, a lot of fans, even though some still hate him, even I, who didn't kind of like him, found him a little bit more tolerable in this season because he acted more mature. He acted more mature and he understood the fact that sooner or later he would have to go back to his world, and that's what happens. Because after he helps Sonic and Cosmo and Tails and everybody defeat the Metarex, Eggman builds a little rocket ship for him and sends him that thus sends him back to his world. Now, according to Eggman, he doesn't know how old Chris will be when he arrives back on his world, but at least this will get him there. But once again, he does have tears in his eyes as he's flying away in this rocket when he sees Sonic out the window. Basically, not wanting to part with him again, but now in a more mature stage, understanding that, okay, this is best for both worlds because I don't want, what nearly happened 6 years ago to happen again. So, but then, that's the end of Chris Thorndyke in the series. But of course, we see him again in the Sonic X comic book. But then after that's done, we no longer see him again, which I think is really, is a relief to a lot of fans out there. But but a lot of you always probably have been asking the question: why did they add Chris Thorndyke to the series? Why in God's name would they add a kid to the series? Well, it goes back to when they had another show produced by 4 kids back in the mid to late 90s, and that is Pokemon. And ever since Pokemon came out, who was Pikachu, the main character, teamed up with? A human kid, right? So that is why Sonic X had a human kid. It's all because it started back with the Pokemon series, with Ash being the first human kid with the main character. But also it's the fact that not just Sonic, but his friends as well needed human guides, people to kind of give them an understanding of the world they were in so they wouldn't be confused. That is why Chris Thorndyke was put in there, for those two reasons. One, it was to keep in tradition of what was started in Pokemon and continued on in other series like Digimon and a few others, but also to give Sonic and friends, you know, human guide, basically personal guides to the world they were in, so they get a better understanding, and they basically wouldn't be, freaked out, or they wouldn't, scare anybody. Basically, give everyone all around a better understanding of who they were and where they and what the world they were in was about. But that's all I have to say about the reason Chris Thorndyke was in the series of Sonic X. I hope I I hope a lot of everybody that didn't like him have a better understanding of it. And I will talk to you all next time. Till next time, I'm Brian signing off saying God bless and take care.